Our next question is from Monica, who says, "Hey Jill, if you were elected, what would you tackle in the first 100 days?"
What we could tackle very quickly, in fact, is to break up the big banks by using Bill Black's recommended initiatives to break them up. Bill Black, who wrote the book, "The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One." We would also instruct the Drug Enforcement Agency to use science and to take marijuana and hemp off of the list of scheduled substances.
Our next question is from Mindy Smith, who is running as a Green in California. And her question says, "Talk about ranked choice voting. How does it work?"
Thank you, Mindy, for bringing that up. Ranked choice voting, very important. Anybody who's worried about spoiling the election, and you're probably in touch with people who are complaining about that. We have a solution. It's just fix the voting system. The solution to a compromised democracy is not less democracy. Silencing the voices of political opposition is not democracy, that's tyranny. We need ranked choice voting. It lets you rank your choices. If your first loses, your vote's reassigned to your second choice.
Our next question is from Domenico Di Salvo, who says, "Hey Jill, how do we get more congressional support for the party and get congresspeople who support your vision of the future?"
The good news, Domenico, is that there are scores of Greens who are running for Congress right now. And one of the things our campaign is doing is lifting the veil and shining the light on these wonderful down-ballot candidates, not only for Congress, but at all levels of government. And get out and support them, work for them. We need to bring them into Congress at the same time that we are heading for the White House. And the more of us that go to D.C., the sooner we will get it cleaned up. Thank you.
Our next question is from Lori Lamb, who says, "Hey Jill, can you speak about Bernie Sanders supporters and if they are welcome to your campaign?"
Yes, and let me give a big welcome and thank you to all of the Bernie supporters who stood up for a better vision of America that works for working people and who refused to be silenced or intimidated by the Democratic Party. So thank you for building this movement and thank you for continuing this movement. This is a very powerful coalition for the Bernie passion to be meeting the Green Party infrastructure. Together we're unstoppable.
Our next question is from Ashley Nicole, who says, "Hey Jill, what are your plans to improve mental health availability as president?"
Mental health. Mental health is absolutely critical. It should be a routine part of health insurance, and it would be covered completely under a improved Medicare for All system, which is what we are supporting. We should be covered head to toe, cradle to grave, not only physical health, but mental health, as well as reproductive health, your pharmaceuticals, your hearing aid, whatever you need, this should be covered. Mental health is critical to our health.
Our next question is from the Kobe System, who says, "What is your stance on the war on drugs?"
The war on drugs is a failure. It's a failure and it's a very bad thing. I will end the war on drugs. We will treat drug use as a health issue, not as a criminal issue. And the first step is to legalize marijuana and hemp and to actually pardon all those people who are wrongly incarcerated in the first place for using a substance which is actually safer than alcohol and nicotine.
Our next question is from Sean C. Gay, who says, "Hey Jill, how can we reclaim the institution of scientific research from undue corporate interest?"
Great. Wonderful question, Sean. How can we get corporate interests out of the business of defining our research institutions and our research goals? There are many ways. For one thing, we need to stop the revolving door between our regulatory agencies and the corporations they're supposed to be regulating. Also, we need to get money out of politics, and that's not so hard to do. It's time for a fully publicly financed system of elections and to free the media so the airwaves are free for our use.
Our next question is from Raghu, and he says, "Hey Jill, Can you address food, agriculture, and farmers and what you would do?
So we need to restore our farming economy, our farming families, our farming communities, and to take back the institution of farming from corporate America, which has degraded it, which has poisoned it, which has created a food system, an industrial food system that is bad for farmers, farm workers, communities, the planet, and consumers who are eating it. We need a healthy, organic, and sustainable food system.
Our next question here is from Enkoku Yokohama, who says, "Hey Jill, what would you do to make a path to citizenship easier for immigrants like myself?"
Great. So we need a welcoming path to citizenship for the immigrants who've actually been at the foundation of our economies, our community, and our culture. And we need to address the crisis of immigration by stopping the things that are causing it in the first place, namely NAFTA, the war on drugs, and by invading other countries and undermining democracies.
Our next question is from Danielle Myers, who says, "Hey Jill, how will you help Puerto Rico?"
So Puerto Rico needs to be liberated from the colonial status that has been inflicted on it for centuries. Yes. And immediately, the first step is for us to bail out Puerto Rico as a repayment for the incredible resources, human skills and labor that have been extracted from Puerto Rico by U.S. corporations that have been able to relocate there.
Our next question is from Steve Alish, who says, "Hey Jill, do you support publicly financed elections, and how would you make that happen?"
Yes, we need publicly financed elections. Hand in hand, we also need to liberate the airwaves, because the minute candidates have free access to the public airwaves, then the cost of campaigning takes a nosedive, and then it's very affordable for us to have publicly funded elections. And I would get private money, whether it is the money of a billionaire funding himself or the money of billionaires funding their candidates to do work for them. We need to get private money out so we can get the people back in.
And our next question comes from Memphis, and they say, "Hey Jill, what can we do to keep the revolution going after the election?"
Thank you. We need to stick together and to stay together, because the work has only begun. Whether we're in the White House or whether we are outside of the White House, we are building, and we've taken an incredible leap forward in this election, and thanks to all of you for making that so. I think we haven't seen yet how far we can go in this election, because we're just beginning to see the word spreading, especially among millennials who are really ready for a change. So hold on to your hat, let's see where it goes, and let's stay in touch.
Jonathan Alonzo asks, "Hey Jill, would you free Leonard Peltier?"
Yes, I would free Leonard Peltier and other political prisoners as well, including Mumia Abu-Jamal, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, and especially Reverend Edward Pinkney, who's imprisoned in Benton Harbor, Michigan, where he was imprisoned basically for fighting back against the takeover of Benton Harbor by the Whirlpool Corporation.
Mike Ridgway asks, "Hey Jill, what is your position on constantly sending more and more money to support Israel's wars while our people go hungry?"
Well, exactly. I mean, not only that it is, these wars are bankrupting America, but also that this is a very unconscionable thing to do. We're calling for an even-handed foreign policy where we stop supporting governments, even our allies, who are violating international law and human rights, as Israel is doing, through occupation, through home demolitions, through assassination programs, collective punishment, disproportional force, etc.
Tom Wenzel asks, "Do you agree with Bernie's economists like Stephanie Kelton that we have the money for free universities?"
Oh, absolutely, we do. And we know that for every dollar we put in to higher education, we get back $7 in return. So it pays for itself. What better investment is there than in the education of our younger generation? This is long overdue.
Our next question is from Jimmy Padilla, who says, "Hey Jill, please tell us how you will help the undocumented immigrants that are living in this country."
So let me say, not only do we need a welcoming path to citizenship, we need to put an immediate end to the deportations, the detentions, and the night raids. The Republicans have shown themselves to be the party of hate and fear, but the Democrats are the party of deportation and detention. So the Green Party offers a new way forward with a welcoming path to citizenship and respecting the refugees who've come here fleeing our misguided policies. We need to end those policies.
Steel City for Stein asks, "Hey Jill, what will you do to make sure politicians and bankers that break the law are held accountable for their crimes?"
Well, exactly. The first thing that we need to do is to elect representatives who are not being bankrolled by those very banks. And Hillary Clinton, we certainly know about her sponsorship by the banks. The Republican Party technically has plenty of sponsorship from them as well. So we need to, put our money where our mouth is and support a politics of integrity that will do the right thing.
We have time for about 3 more questions. So the first comes from Joey, who says, "Hey Jill, what factors would you consider in choosing a potential Supreme Court justice?"
We need a Supreme Court justice who is free from conflicts of interest, from historical connections to the various predatory corporate interests that have, compromised our court system as well as our political system. We need a Supreme Court justice who will stand up for women's rights, for immigrant rights, for human rights, and who will get money out of politics and oppose Citizens United and render corporations not human beings.
Okay, our next question comes from Cyrene Cray, who says, "Hey Jill, what are some of your policies regarding animal rights and animal welfare in the United States?"
So maybe the most important thing we can do is to end the combined animal feeding operations, the CAFOs, which are inhumane and which are a disaster for the environment, and also which produce food that has some rather untoward things added to it, in particular high levels of antibiotics, because when the animals are so crowded together, it's not good for them. They pollute our water supplies and our land and so on. So we need to end that and get back to a healthy system of animal husbandry, healthy and humane.
Jeffrey Stokes asks this question, "Hey Jill, what is your policy for Social Security?"
We need to take the cap off of the Social Security contributions, because right now it's very regressive, so that those contributions not only continue up to the top of the income level, but actually it should be progressive, so that the contribution increases proportionally at higher levels of the income stream. That way we can be sure that Social Security, we can be expanding it, not worry about having to contract it.
And our last question, perhaps one of the most important questions we'll get in this election, comes from AKA The Snake, who says, "Hey Jill, how can we end the two-party trap?"
By supporting the alternative to the two-party trap, which is independent, principled politics through the Green Party, which is collaborating with many of the smaller independent, progressive, and socialist parties. We need to work together to be the strong, unstoppable force that we actually are. We need to stand up and stand strong. We do have the numbers. We have the values of the American people at heart. It's time to stand up and actually take our future back into our own hands.